welcome to Preshow for Monster Monday. My name is DM Gallibond, and you are listening to the dulcet tones of Sirenscape behind my voice. Sirenscape has great sounds for all of your tabletop games, and we're just in the pub while we're waiting, having a few drinks. Musicians are playing. Kind of just having a nice vibe. Anyway, I want to thank everybody who has joined the YouTube channel in the last month or so. We've had our biggest month of growth on record so far, and really appreciate all of that, and appreciate everybody who's been joining us over on the Twitch as well, especially Sassy Cat. Gotta give you a big thanks there, Sassy Cat, for your subscription and your gift sub the other day for Scary Jerry Gaming. So really appreciate that. So we will get started at the top of the hour. I'm just gonna set up my monitors here real quick. Going. Alright. Yep, that is that. Oh, okay. Yeah, we're gonna go on over here. We're gonna bring the music down. Actually, we're not gonna bring the music down. Come on over here by the fire. Come over this way. Yeah. Yeah, we'll have a nice little quiet corner over here. Yeah, that's much better. Okay, everybody take a seat. Hey, welcome everyone to Monster Monday. My name is DM Gallibond, and tonight we are continuing our look at the monsters that come to us from the Strixhaven, a Curriculum of Chaos campaign. Tonight, we are going to be looking at one of the founder dragons of Strixhaven University, none other than Beledros Witherbloom herself. So, let's take a look a little bit about this monster. We're going to talk about her origins, talk about how she appears in the campaign, sort of her stat block in D&D, and then some interesting ways of using her in your own homebrew campaigns, and perhaps reskinning her based on the themes that she has. Alright, so let's go ahead and dive into it now. As always, we always like to look at artwork from the origins and legends of the monster, and Beledros Witherbloom was first created for the Strixhaven School of Mages expansion of Magic the Gathering last year. So she has her own card, and it's an interesting card. It's not a two-sided card, but there are two different versions of the card with two very different pieces of artwork. I believe, I'm not 100% certain, but I believe that one of the versions of the card is a promotional card. I think this one that has the full border around it is the normal card that was released as part of the set. Number 163 out of 275 that were in the Strixhaven School of Mages set. As you can see there, she's like a big black dragon, but she's kind of got that little, there's sort of a magic hallmark with some of the dragons. Those kind of big curved horns. If you think about it, the Nico Bolas has a little bit of that thing going on, except of course he's got that silly little thing, orb or whatever, in the middle between those horns is just sort of floating there. She doesn't. She's got just what looks kind of almost like tree branches growing out of her head. And then her wings, as you'll notice, they're not covered in scales, they're covered in feathers. So that gives us a little bit of a hint of something else that we've seen not long ago. But the origins of Beledros Witherbloom. She's a founder dragon of Strixhaven. She also features in the official lore and fiction created for Strixhaven, released by the Magic the Gathering team. Now, in the short story Lessons by Adana Washington, which is part of the official fiction that went along with the Strixhaven release, Beledros has an encounter with Planeswalker Liliana Vess. And in this story, Liliana Vess is masquerading as a professor at the university. So Liliana is trying to find a way to resurrect someone who gave his own life in order to save hers. And she goes to Beledros because Beledros sort of is the dragon that embodies all of the life and death stuff and everything. And there's like some sort of special magic that's going to be needed to bring this guy back. But Beledros reveals her philosophy of the natural cycle of life and death by refusing to offer Liliana any insights on the special resurrection magic required for this particular case. So in Magic the Gathering on this card, Beledros is a 7 casting cost monster. She's a legendary creature, an elder dragon. She's a creature with flying. And at the beginning of each upkeep, you create a 1/1 black and green pest creature token with a feature that says when this creature dies, you gain 1 life. So then you can pay 10 life and you can untap all lands you control and activate that only once each turn. So this is a kind of a thing where somehow, you would maybe try to get kind of some sort of loop lock on your deck where you'd be able to keep getting upkeep phases or multiple upkeep phases, and so you just crank out all of these stupid little tokens, and then you can pay 10 life and whoosh, untap all your lands, and oh hey, now I got a bunch of land I can do stuff with. So that is kind of a way that you might use that, or you might just say, hey, I need a big flying creature that's fairly tough, 4/4. I'll just use her that way. Alright, so now this is the promotional version, I think. And the reason I think it's promotional is because it doesn't have anything about the set down here. So I think this is the version they did for promotion. Although it's been so long since I played Magic, I couldn't swear that for sure. Alright, so the description of the monster that we get from the D&D campaign, she's classified as both a dragon and a druid, and she has a small selection of druid spells that she can cast once per day. Now, she's listed as a founding dragon of the university in the chapter on creatures in the campaign, but she never appears in any of the chapters as part of the plot, nor is she given an actual description. So the only description they give you is the artwork, the only physical description. Her picture in the campaign is a detail from the previous slide, where she's shown as a dragon with a head similar to Nicobolus and great black plumage with feathers, and that makes her a look. I can speak English. Certainly I can. Sometimes. She's got great black plumage with feathers that makes her look a bit like the deep crow we saw a few weeks ago from the Acquisitions Incorporated sourcebook. So her breath weapon combines 2 energy types simultaneously, both poison and necrotic energy. Thankfully, however, it only requires 1 saving throw to mitigate both parts of that damage. So Beledros in the campaign or in the D&D sourcebook also harkens back to her magic origins. And one of her abilities is to summon Pest Mascots, and when those mascots die in combat, she regenerates health. So you see, that's kind of like that upkeep thing that happens when you generate one of those tokens. those tokens get generated, and then when they die, you as the player in Magic gain life. But in the D&D version, she regains health when they die. And that's going to be important when we talk about using her in your campaigns. Alright, so the lore we get for her is going to come out of the Strixhaven A Curriculum of Chaos campaign sourcebook. So, the dragon Beledros masters the intertwined magic of life and death. Her power taps into the life force flowing through living things and the natural world. She manipulates that energy to give healing and life, or to bring death and decay. Her mastery of this magic sustains her own life force even without sustenance of food, drink, and air. She founded Witherbloom College to pass on her understanding of the natural cycle. She hoped to create generations of stewards who would use her teachings to defend nature and help others. In keeping with the dichotomous nature of her philosophy and magic, she views the more dangerous aspects of nature, including the inevitability of death and decay, as natural and integral parts of existence. So that's one reason why she's reluctant to help anybody yet. Now you can see sort of with this detail, they've kind of also brightened her up a little bit and pulled her out of the background, so you can see that on these horns that she has, they really do look a lot more like tree branches, and in this one she's got something dangling from that, like, you know, like a decoration, like an earring or something. So that is the image that they use for her in the campaign sourcebook. Alright, as we know in D&D 5e, every creature has to have a type, and no surprise, Beledros Witherbloom is a dragon. So there are large reptilian creatures of ancient origin and tremendous power. True dragons, including the good metallic and the evil chromatic, are highly intelligent and have innate magic. Also in this category are creatures distantly related to true dragons, but less powerful, less intelligent, less magical, such as wyverns and pseudo-dragons. And then we're going to take a look at the mechanical features of Beledros. By the way, those of you that may have noticed, we're gradually making some changes to our streaming studio here. We started last week with changing a little bit about how the camera is set up. Also now you may notice I've added some accent lighting in the background, and I don't know whether you guys can tell or not, but I've added the classic diffuser 1/2 to my light source, which is, I went out and got some tissue paper, some white tissue paper, and I rubber banded that over the edge of the lamp. So now instead of it being a nice harsh light, it's a little bit softer light. So I don't know if that helps any or not, but we will see. And we have plans to improve the setup a little bit going forward into March as well. Alright, so we're going to now go over to the this page here, and we're going to take a look at Beledros Witherbloom, her mechanical features. No, that means go over here. Thank you very much. Alright, so Beledros Witherbloom, she is a gargantuan dragon. She also has that druid tag on her, and she's neutral good. Armor class 22, 444 hit points, speed of 40, fly speed of 80, and swim speed of 40. Initiative of +2, and her stat block, is in line with a lot of other dragons. The one thing that does stand out, she's got a little bit better dex than most dragons. When you look at even adult and ancient dragons, dex is usually kind of their dump stat, because they're just like big, huge buckets of hit can literally, with their frightful presence, they can look at you and destroy you almost. So they, with all of their physical attacks and their breath weapon and sometimes their spell casting, they're just really formidable. And they don't care a lot about dex. And Beledros has a little bit better dex than most. So she's got all of those extra savings throws and skill bonuses. She's immune to necrotic and poison because, hey, guess what? That's what her breath weapon is made from. Has blind sight out to 120 feet, passive perception of 26, speaks a number of languages, and is a CR 24 monster. So she does have legendary resistances and unusual nature, so she doesn't need air, food, or drink. She makes a bite attack and 2 claw attacks. Those are all plus 16 attacks, and 1d10 plus 9 for the bite, and 1d6 plus 9 for the claws. She's got Decaying Breath, that's her breath weapon. 90-foot cone and a DC 23, or take a total of 12d12 damage. Half of that, 6d12, is necrotic, half of that is poison. So you just have one saving throw to make, but if you have resistance or immunities to only one type of it, then you still take the full or the half damage if you make your save from the other part of the breath. And then she's got this weird thing going on. She's got this miasmal flow. She becomes a swirling cloud of green mist and can move up to half her flying speed without provoking opportunity attacks, and then resume her true form. During that movement, she can move through creatures and objects as if they were difficult terrain. And if she moves through a creature, it must succeed on a DC 23 con save or become poisoned until the end of its next turn. And if Beledros ends his move inside an object, she takes 5 force damage. Alright, so now what that means is that her movement is evocative of something like, let's say, a mummy lord that turns itself into sand and flies along, moves across the battlefield like that. And also is a little bit like a living cloud kill spell, except for the fact that, I think it would have been nice if they said when she goes through, you have to make that DC 23 or you start taking poison damage. But no, you just get the poison condition. So it's kind of like a cloud kill light. You get the poison condition, but you don't take any damage from her passing through you. Then she's got her spell casting ability, Greater Restoration, Mask Cure Wounds, Plant Growth, Revivify, Speak with Dead. Legendary actions, she can take 3 of those, has a Claw, which is 1 claw attack, has that Miasmal Flow ability, which costs 2 actions, and then Teeming with Life. And this is where she harkens back to her Magic the Gathering card ability. With all 3 actions, she can create 1d4 Pest Mascots in an unoccupied space within 60 feet. The pests obey her commands and take turns immediately after hers. Any creature other than a pest takes 9 poison damage if it starts its turn within 5 feet of one or more of these pests. And when one of these pests drops to 0 hit points, Beledros regains 9 hit points. So they disappear after 10 minutes when Beledros dies or when she uses the action again. So this is, again, that's part of what we're going to talk about when we talk about using her in your campaigns. And I went ahead and pulled up the Pest Mascot. We just covered these last week. But these guys are just, basic little CR 1/4 monsters. Armor class 13, 22 hit points. They regenerate. They got that spiny hide, and they just have little bite attacks. So they're nothing special, but they're extra enemies that go on the battlefield, and she gets a bump by regaining hit points every time they die. Alright, so we're going to go back to our slides and take a look at Using Beledros Witherbloom in encounters. So how would you create a hard encounter with these creatures for a party of 5 PCs? Well, she's a CR24 monster. So any party under level 19, or 19 or below, I should say, this would be, by the book, a deadly encounter. For a party that is at the current level cap of 20, without homebrew rules to go beyond level 20, then you're looking at a hard encounter. So she is definitely a capstone monster. If she's not going to be your, the main antagonist of your campaign, then she might well be one of the major generals or lieutenants or whatever in your Evil Incorporated, or your Antagonist Incorporated, as you will. Because I have an idea of a way you could use her that we'll talk about in a few minutes. Alright, now if you are one of those level 20 players and you are going to have to go up and fight Beledros Witherbloom, you want to build up your resistance. She has a powerful breath weapon that deals a total of 12d12 damage. Half of it is poison, half of it's necrotic. You better be resistant or immune to both if you don't want to take any damage from that. She's got the living cloud kill, so during combat she can take on the form similar to a living cloud kill spell, move across the battlefield and through other creatures, leaving them subject to the poison condition, not poison damage. Alright, because I misread that the first time when I was writing this up. Alright, now pesty minions. She can summon Pest Mascots as one of her legendary actions. If she does, these minions will heal her when they die. And she's a legendary opponent. So like most ancient dragons, she has legendary actions and legendary resistance that you must overcome in order to defeat her. And the legendary resistance, that is, if she fails a saving throw for any effect you throw at her, she can choose to succeed instead. So that's one thing that makes dragons really kind of nasty to deal with. And other really high-level monsters as well. Dragons aren't the only thing that has that. Okay, now let's move around behind the screen, and let's say we want to throw Beledros Witherbloom at our players. So what would be some good tactics to use? Well, I have what I think is a pretty decent opening gambit. So here's a good opener if she doesn't get the first initiative in combat. And this just gives the party a taste of her abilities. So have her use her first legendary action at the end of the turn just before she goes. So then at the end of that turn, she uses all 3 actions on her Teeming with Life feature and place the pest between herself and the party, adjacent to party members if possible. Then she uses her breath weapon. That will deal tons of damage to the party. It kills the Pest Mascot, and it heals Beledros at the same time. And this also will give some mystery to the players as to whether it's the breath weapon that is causing her to regenerate, or whether those mascots dying has something to do with that. Because, of course, if you're a good DM, if you're a better DM than I am, then you absolutely refuse to allow your players to have any access to any kinds of resources where they know where they could possibly look up any of the stats of any of the monsters they are going to face. All good DMs should not allow anyone to play in their game unless the only source they have is a player's handbook. Of course, I'm being facetious, but it's like it could be really cool. Like if you're throwing this out there and none of your players do have access to the Strixhaven source book, they'll be like, "Oh, crap! Her breath weapon regenerates her," and if somebody throws that out, you could be like, "I don't know, maybe." You could sort of let them run with that for a while until they figure it out. Until they figure out what is causing her to regenerate that way. All right. Now, where would you place Beledros in a campaign? So, as a CR24 monster, we've already said she should appear as the capstone monster in a campaign, or at least one of the capstone monsters if your campaign is around an organization as the antagonist. Now, her philosophy of the natural cycle of life and death being more important than anything else, it's possible that Beledros could be the antagonist in a campaign where a culture is striving to achieve immortality for its members or for its leader. So, picture this. Your players, your PCs, are part of a culture that venerates its leader. Everything is prosperous. The people think of themselves as good, and they feel so blessed that this leader has been there. And then somebody tells them, "Hey, you know what? There's a way that this leader can become immortal, and we need to recruit some adventurers to go out and find these things to help do this ritual so that the leader can become immortal." And the PCs, because they're patriotic and they're like, yes, let's go do that. And they see themselves as heroic, and they go out and they fight a bunch of things and they go along. Well, then they start running into resistance, and maybe somewhere along the way, they get wind of this powerful opposition force. And at first they might feel like this powerful opposition is an existential threat to their very world. But as they grow in power and uncover more layers of the mystery, perhaps they meet Beledros or one of her lieutenants partway through the campaign and have an opportunity to see the conflict from her point of view. Hey, from my philosophy, Beledros might say, you guys are being evil. Your leader is trying to circumvent the natural cycle of existence. I'm not opposed to your civilization. I'm just trying to make sure that your leader dies when it's time for that leader to die. And then that might leave the players in a standpoint of going, well, are we fighting on the right side? Or are we not? Because, of course, then it's like, yeah, this leader's trying to become immortal. What's that all about? How is this leader going to become immortal? Maybe we should start asking more questions. Maybe, so you could be one of these things where the party starts off with a goal that has been given to them by these people that they know and trust, but then as they get partway through the campaign, they say, oh, wait a minute, can we trust the people that have given this to us? Ooh, does this big dragon have a point? Maybe she does. So that might be a kind of thing that you find. So she could be something that the first time she appears, obviously if you're going to introduce her in that aspect and give the players a chance to decide which way their campaign is going to go, you would introduce her at a point where she's way more than a match for the players. And it's not designed as a combat, but it's just sort of designed as, here's the fork in the road. Which path are you guys going to take? Or are you going to come up with a third path that I, as the DM, haven't thought about yet? That might even be more fun for us to explore. So, that could give you some really fun RP opportunities and some other types of things. So, that's just one idea of using her in a campaign. So now, how might we reskin Beledros Witherbloom and make a new and very interesting type of dragon or type of dragon adjacent creature from her? Thank you, Jerry Hulkins, for the inspiration for that one. So, as an embodiment of the philosophy for the natural cycle of life, Beledros could be reskinned to establish the natural cycle on different planes of existence. So, for instance, what is the natural cycle of life on each of the elemental planes? What would be the natural cycle on the plane of air, the plane of water, the plane of earth, the plane of fire? Hey, Sassy Cat, thanks for joining us. If you could come up with in your own world, or if you wanted to go and research through the various editions of D&D and find out if somebody has already come up with the cycle of life, if you will, on one of these elemental planes, well, then you might reskin Beledros and put her into one of those planes, sort of as the embodiment of that natural cycle. Then, if you don't want to do the elementals, well, what's the natural cycle of life in the astral sea? Or what about in the abyss? Or what about in the nine hells? And that could be a really interesting version of Beledros Witherbloom. I mean, yes, I'm here in the nine hells to make sure that the natural cycle of life and death is maintained on this plane. What about in the Feywild or the Shadowfell? You could just sort of take her theme of embodying the balance of life and death and the natural cycle of life and death, and then change it from the physical world, the natural world, and put it into any one of these other planes of existence, and come up with something that thematically and power-wise is very similar to Beledros Witherbloom, but is so completely unique and different that no other D&D group except your players are ever going to get a chance to play against it. So that's a way you can riff on her abilities and her energy types and the philosophy she holds in this campaign, and imagine what she would be like in other planes of the multiverse. So that's just one sort of way of looking at how you might reskin her. You could, of course, I'm sure, come up with 100 different other ways of reskinning her. All right, and I think that is going to just about do it. I'm going to take a look over here and see if we have any other. Okay, I don't see any questions over here in this thing. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to move us to this view, and then I'm going to go into the wrap up, and then I'll come back and check if anybody has any questions. Okay, so I have been DM Gallibond. This has been Beledros Witherbloom, our Monster Monday subject for the week. I have 4 live streams that I do most weeks. Most of the time on Sundays, we have the Walker of Waterdeep. That was on hiatus yesterday because of a conflict I have. Looks like we have a conflict with at least one, maybe more of our players on this coming Sunday. So jury's still out whether we're going to play this coming Sunday or not. Thursday night, we play the Sword Coast Chronicles. That's Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. And Saturday night, we play our old school 2nd edition game, Saturday Night Greyhawk. Saturdays at 7:30, and we are playing both the Thursday game and the Saturday game at this time, this coming week. You can find our live streams over on Twitch at twitch.tv/Gallibond, and all the archives, everything is over on YouTube, the YouTube channel, and we do have a Patreon. So if you have a little bit of extra change and you want to help us out, and maybe we can make some more upgrades to our streaming studio, and maybe we can have some more content that we create. Next time we come back for Monster Monday, which should be next week, we will be looking at the Brackish Trudge, which is another monster from Strixhaven, a Curriculum of Chaos. Now, I know that later this month, when the new resource from Critical Role releases, we will have a first impression stream like we sometimes do, or like we usually do when a new book releases. So that'll be a stream. I think last time I wound up waiting until Friday, which gave me a few days to go through it, and I think that's probably going to be the best. I'll probably do that again with the new source book, is wait until Friday to do that first impression stream. And then we'll probably do a monster out of that on the following Monday. But I think I want to finish up the Strixhaven monsters before I jump into doing all the new monsters that come out of that Critical Role source book. All right, let's go back to the... see if we have any questions. I don't see any over here. Let me take a look over here. All right, I don't see any at the moment. Well, thank you all so much for joining us this evening. Hope you will be back to join us for future editions of Monster Monday. I am going to bring our music back up, and then I'm going to go over and I will look to see if anybody else is about to stream some D&D, and then we will go and we will raid them. So, let me just go over here, and we'll do this. Alright, so... looks like D&D night. So, we'll go ahead and we'll raid the Smash Oasis. I think that's how they want us to pronounce their name, so... we'll do that. Alright everyone, thanks again for joining us. Hope you have a wonderful week. And as always, watch out for the monsters under the bed. I'm DM Gallibond. Good night, everybody.